What's going on, Star Wars fans?
Hello there.
We are here with a impromptu live. We decided to come on. I think we're going to start doing this a little bit more often. There is so much Star Wars stuff still out there. We got comics, we got books coming. We obviously have some movies and stuff coming, but we're just going to sit here and we'd love for you to join us, talk about Star Wars. We got Mike, a guy who loves Star Wars. Nick's here with us. So let's get into it. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for getting us together.
Yeah, can't complain.
Yeah.
Anytime we get to talk Star Wars is a good day.
Exactly. And I was reading some stuff. There are some Acolyte stuff coming out. The book just came out. That new book just came out. And then they have a couple comics, I think. I saw a Kalneka thing coming out as well, which will be pretty cool because I really liked the Acolyte. I know we all did. And like you were talking about yesterday, Mike, on your podcast, we need to fill in some gaps. And I think I think these are good ways to do it. Obviously, we would all love to see either animation or live action and stuff like that. But I think that when we can get some sort of just information to help us out. And again, you recommended Shadow of the Sith to me, which I did enjoy. And it made me enjoy the sequels a little bit more, because it does give you a little bit more backstory in reference to Rey and stuff. So I thought that was good. But there's some cool things coming out until we get the Maul series, until we get Mandalorian and Grogu, Ahsoka season 2. So
I mean, well, first of all, it's titled Hot Takes, and you immediately went to the Acolyte and the sequel trilogy. Oh my God, calm down. But yeah, I love these times in Star Wars. I get it. Great new Star Wars content. We just got off the backs of Andor season 2, which is like peak of all peaks. But I love this time in Star Wars in between shows because this is when all the announcements come out. This is when all the news happens and all the rumors and all this stuff. Like we only got one other live action Star Wars show, and that's Ahsoka season 2. We don't have a Star Wars Celebration for 2 more years. That means at some point in these gaps between shows, they're going to announce the next live action show. And they'll do some other announcements for animated stuff and whatever. We got Tales of the Underworld announced like 4 weeks before it released. So we're sort of always on the edge of our seats as Star Wars fans here, waiting for the next big announcement. But going back to Shadow of the Sith, I'm re-listening to audiobooks, of course, the Heir to the Empire trilogy, because I think what we're really getting with the Mandoverse is a canon adaptation of that Heir to the Empire. And I'm on Heir to the Empire, the first book, and I'm re-listening to it, and I'm listening to the whole Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker stuff. If you don't know, Mara Jade is the Emperor's hand, so she was like a secondary apprentice almost, and Darth Vader was the other apprentice. And the explanation of her existence in the original trilogy to Luke Skywalker as they're sort of stranded in the woods here. I sat there and I listened to it and I went, if this was in the sequel trilogy, fans would have hated it. Like absolutely hated it. It was almost along the same lines of somehow Palpatine returned or Palpatine's on Exegol and he made a clone of himself. Like it was almost the same exact thing without obviously cloning Palpatine. But I was like, sitting there going, if this happened, everybody would have hated it. However, if you talk about the Heir to the Empire trilogy, everybody loves it. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting conversation to have of like, just because Disney's making it, does that make it bad? I mean, it's sort of a interesting thing. I just literally was listening to it today, so I thought I'd bring it up. But
I 100% agree with you that most of the stories that everyone's claiming to either A, love or to have read, B, I think there's a lot of people who talk about them who haven't because they have heard the general story and go, that sounds cool. Yeah. And then when you actually read them, you're like, this is it's kind of got some knots in it. But Heir of the Empire is great. I'm not saying it's not, but
it's great.
I think you're right. Like if you were to even sketch out the sequel trilogy before it came out in its outline, in its outline and gave it to all the fans, they would have been like, I want to see that.
Yep.
But I'm gonna quiet down because of that.
Well, what's funny to me too is The Force Awakens. I love The Force Awakens. Like Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, I can watch them. They're not my favorites, but I still have a fun time watching them. But The Force Awakens to me is like the perfect setup to the whole trilogy. And like you said, if you pitch that idea to the Star Wars fandom of this new girl, much like Luke Skywalker, doesn't have parents, all this other stuff, you introduce a stormtrooper that's turned to the light. That's immediately really cool. It's Vader's grandchild trying to follow in the footsteps of Vader. Why is Luke on Ahch-To and stranded away? What happened to Leia and Han? Who's this big new Snoke character with the First Order? Like, that sounds awesome. And The Force Awakens successfully got the hype level really, really high in the Star Wars fandom. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the pitch for the sequel trilogy was like, yes, please, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yeah, it's on paper, I guess.
Yeah. I would say the same. I think the same can be said for like Legends stuff too, like Heir of the Empire. You know, I don't want to use that one because that is like genuinely great.
Oh, yeah.
And
No,
Timothy
absolutely.
Zahn did do a great job of like integrating it with his new stuff that's now like all
Canon
the
stuff.
Thrawn stuff. But
Yeah.
there's some funky Star Wars Legends lore that like is out there and is either really cool or is just like, man, I don't know, it's a little out there.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of it is just assumed that it's great because it's not the new stuff.
Yeah.
And as we heard from James Lucino, there was not a ton of oversight except for nope, didn't like that.
Yeah.
And as they changed publishers' hands, they had the right to sort of like override it and that sort of stuff. So I feel like it's the same stuff. Like the pitch, I think everybody loves the pitch until they get it. And then and it includes all the old stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you look at it's always a running joke, but it's almost like reality. Star Wars projects, it's like you get a project and it's like, give it 10 years. Like you don't know if Star Wars fans actually like it or not until 10 years later. The prequel trilogy is the prime example of that. Like at the time, all the media, all the critics are saying this is bad. So everybody's like, oh, this is bad. The actors are terrible, like all this horrible stuff. But those kids who grew up watching those grow up, and 10 years later, it's the best thing on the planet. So it's really like with any Star Wars project, and there's a few that are like instant successes, like we just came off the backs of Andor season 2. But usually it's like, we'll give it 10 years because either there's going to be more story that adds to it, like the Clone Wars with the prequel trilogy, or it's just the fans that it was made for don't really have a voice yet to speak out online.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think also that some of the stuff, it's funny. While I was setting stuff up today and just getting things ready to go, there's so much stuff out there that, and I'm sure you guys are the same way. Not everybody is fans like we are, but the stuff that's out there, you can continue to watch over and over again. Well, I just watched Rogue One the other day, right after we got done with Andor, and I put it on again today just because. Yeah. And I went back and I watched Tales of the Empire again. Just because everything is so good, and you still, even as much as we break it down, there's still little things that it might not be an Easter egg, it might not be something significant or substantial towards that character, but there's little things that we still catch that I think are so cool, even after you've watched it 100 times, literally. Which I think is awesome. And I think you're right about that 10-year thing where these people that aren't like us and huge super fans, but they're like, okay, cool, let me watch this again. Oh, all right, now I'm starting to enjoy this. Oh, okay, now I see why Anakin was such a whiny little teenager, and they start to figure this stuff out, which I think is great, because again, we start getting more Star Wars stuff from these guys. And I think yesterday, Mike, when you were talking about some of the stuff, whether it's going to be good or bad, man, I don't think if Dave put out something horrible, I think we'd all still love it, because I don't think he's going to do that, and I don't think John will do that either.
Yeah, I've actually recently been seeing some weird Dave Filoni slander online, which is just insane to me. But yeah, when you think of Star Wars, at least now, currently, you think Dave Filoni, because I mean, he's given us the Clone Wars with George Lucas, but now Rebels and Ahsoka and The Mandalorian with Jon Favreau, and now he's coming to the movie theaters with Jon Favreau with The Mandalorian and Grogu, and he's giving us Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Underworld, and the Bad Batch and all this stuff. So, I mean, it's a little ridiculous, but yeah, I mean, anything that his name is on, and that's thankfully for the rest of time going to be hopefully everything because of his new role, but it's going to be good. I think everything's sort of got a plan now, and he got the role of chief creative officer only a couple of years ago, so now it's going to be put into like place because all the other projects have already been done or in production already. So now we're getting to the point where everything moving forward from here on out, he's got his hands on in one way, shape, or form. So that'll be really cool to hopefully get a more interconnected universe like we've been talking about.
Yeah. Do you guys read the comics?
I've read some, like the War of the Bounty Hunter run. I read the whole thing. I've read some Vader comics, but not all.
I used to all the time.
Yeah.
There's a website, I can't remember what it is, and I doubt I have my membership for it anymore, but you could basically have every comic ever on the website. Like, you wouldn't have to go out and buy them. So you could just run through. I mean, you could go on it for hours. I can't remember the name of the website. I should figure that out. But I used to read them on there. And there was also somebody, again, who I've not remember the name, on YouTube, who used to narrate Star Wars comics and put sound effects in there.
That's cool.
And it was really good. So and they would only they kind of knew what they were doing, because they would only put on, the comics that were kind of climactic and big. So they didn't do like all of them, but they did all the best ones. So
yeah, well, that's why I like Audible so much, because the book, listening to the books, like obviously it's pretty much you close your eyes and you're watching a show, because the sound effects and the music is all it's they do a great job with that,
voices and everything.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
but going what Jay's saying here, it's the prime example of, again, the sequel trilogy can be made so much better by other projects. Like Ron just said, Rogue One, I just watched it on Sunday again. It's so much better, which is crazy because it was already one of my top 3 favorite Star Wars movies all time. And it's even better now because of Andor. And I think, like the legacy of Vader comics and like all these other books we're talking about, and even hopefully shows like The Mandalorian and future shows, they can make the sequels better, just like Andor and Rogue One make the original trilogy better, and the Clone Wars make the prequels better. Like, there's so much room for growth there, especially with the sequels. With the originals, you got a very limited amount of time there to set that up. Andor's like 5 years. Andor and Rogue One is all in 5 years. With the sequel trilogy, it's 30 years of content that you can just do whatever. Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple, all this stuff, it's got to be explained at some point, and it's got to hopefully be explained well and set up the sequel trilogy to be even better, which is crazy. So my hot take for today, is that Rogue One might be the greatest Star Wars movie of all time.
Okay.
I can't put it above Revenge of the Sith. I just can't do it. I physically can't do it.
My next question.
I can't do it, but it might be. I watched it on Sunday, and it's crazy because of how drastic Andor, because we all heard the interviews, Diego Luna going, this is going to change Rogue One forever. This is going to make Rogue One so much better. And I'm like, how? Okay, how? Really? Realistically, how can that even be possible? And it's like, it's insane. You think of Luthen the entire time. You think of what he did, obviously, all those years. You think of Cassian and what he's given up with Bix and the child on Mina Rao, and you're thinking about all that stuff. But the best is the opening scene where the opening scene for Cassian, when he goes to the Ring of Crafine right after the end of Andor season 2, and he shows up in his first line. What's his name? Tivik, I think. Yeah. He goes, "Where were you?" And he said, "I came as fast as I could." And you now know he was put on house arrest on Yavin, so he couldn't get there in time. He had to go save Clea on Coruscant, so he couldn't get there in time. And then he goes, "What's the weapon?" And he pushes him against the wall, and he goes, "It's a planet killer." And it's like, oh my god, like it's this huge, because the whole lead up of Andor season 1 and season 2, he's trying to figure out what this weapon is the whole time, and it's so good, and even helped craft the weapon. It's like, oh my god, it's so good.
Well, and I think it also brings a different thought process to A New Hope as well.
Yes, absolutely,
which I love. We have in in the OG, in 4, 5, and 6, you're concentrating on this Death Star, especially 1.
Yeah.
Okay. And now we're like, okay, we figure out that they got the plans, and here's this farm boy, and there's the whole story. But now we know the whole story leading up to that one significant moment. And and it wasn't like, oh, hey, here's the plans, go blow up this star or this battle station or whatever they think it is.
Yep.
It's these 5 years getting to Yavin 4, seeing Yavin 4 in A New Hope, going, Luthen started this. And knowing that whole backstory now, I think has just made it that much more incredible and better storytelling with George Lucas. I think Tony added to George's storytelling in these 2 seasons along with Rogue One, and I think it's just fantastic, and it just makes all of that, like you were saying, just so much better. And you thought about that at first. You're like, what do you mean it's going to be better? What do you mean it's going to be, what's going to change? But it does.
I think I agree with you, Mike. I think obviously I agree with you a ton, Ron. But like, I think if you're going to pick a single movie to show someone who's never seen Star Wars, I don't know how you don't pick Rogue One at this point. Exactly. And knowing that you can go back and like reset it up. Because Empire is great, but like, what do you care if you didn't know, if you didn't already see Luke and Vader before and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I feel like objectively, from just a fine movie standpoint, Rogue One kicks ass. And now, as you both said, it's so much deeper when you can like draw on all of it. And then I will state, maybe hot take, that Andor season 2, because of what it does for Rogue One, makes A New Hope wild. Like the whole concept of like how they must have felt to see this kid show up and do what he did. Complete miracle. Yeah. Like, I think it, as you said, Ron, like it sets up A New Hope in this other way where I'm like, oh my God. Like, of course they had a little coronation at the end in this big hall, like for morale, because they knew it's coming, and I think it makes the whole thing like if you were in Yavin 4, why wouldn't you believe in something like the Force after A New Hope? Like, why wouldn't you? Because now you got these like a handful of people who are just like incredible and pulled off something, saved Leia from the Death Star, went and blew up the Death Star, and now we got to get out of here. And I don't know. I think it makes A New Hope like crazy.
Yeah, it makes it so much better. And honestly, if I were to be telling somebody who's never seen Star Wars before, but like obviously knows that Vader is Anakin, because that's kind of common knowledge at this point, I would honestly say you start with Andor season 1. You'd go Andor season 1, season 2, Rogue One, original trilogy, and then go back to the prequels after. I think that honestly, you could start with the prequels. You could start with the Phantom Menace, and that would work. It obviously still works, but I'd start with Andor because you're going the entire buildup of the rebellion. And then it's like watching Breaking Bad and then going back and watching Better Call Saul. Like the prequel trilogy was made after the original trilogy, obviously, because that's the way it worked. But you benefit so much out of already knowing what happens in the original trilogy while watching the prequels because you know where all these characters eventually go. But that's what makes it even better. And you see the Easter eggs of like the Death Star plans being on Geonosis and stuff. So I actually think the right way, or not that there is a right way, but if I were to suggest a way of watching Star Wars, I would honestly maybe start with Rogue One, or at least Andor season 1, and then just go up from there and start from the prequels after that. But what I will say, this whole thing with the gold ceremony with the gold at the end of A New Hope, I'm shocked, and I'm sure maybe somebody's working on this. I'm not that good at editing like that, but you've seen the edit where somebody made that the end of Rise of Skywalker has all the different Force ghosts. Like it's got Mace Windu there and Anakin there and Obi-Wan there. I'm shocked that nobody's put all the Force ghosts, I guess, lined up of rebels who gave their lives in A New Hope all at the ceremony with like just gold medals on, like have Cassian there and Luthen there. My question to you guys actually though is, because everybody wants a spin-off because it's a great show. I don't think there will ever be one, but knowing Dave Filoni, knowing how he loves to do this stuff with interconnecting characters and all that, do you think he'll actually ever use Cassian Jr. or whatever we're calling that baby on Mina Rao? Like,
I don't know.
Like post original trilogy.
I would say no, and that's partially because I hope not.
Well, I will.
I could see that the line that like Bix would come back.
Yes.
You know, like she would, and therefore the kid would come back with her.
Yeah.
Whether or not she would endanger the kid like that or not is kind of a choice. But the only reason would be if you were to bring back Bix.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the kid could be involved because Bix still wanted to fight. She was just doing it for Cassian and doing it for the rebellion. But she was like, if we're going to fight these guys, we're going to do it. We're going to win. And obviously they do win, but the Empire comes back.
And I'm in between because I think we all thought, I think, what's going on with Cassian's sister? Are we going to do this again? Are we going to see that? What's going on with Uncle Harlow? I know, Mike, you were like, Uncle Harlow, just a, but a lot of people thought Uncle Harlow was going to be somebody. I don't think he was going to be, somebody's dad or somebody's brother or uncle. No.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe that was put in there. Would I like to see that? Absolutely. I think same with Tales of the Underworld. Are we going to get Cad Bane's son? I would love to see those, if we're going to do that or not. Or was that just put in there to just give you a little glimmer of hope and say, okay, Cassian did this. He worked hard since he was 6 years old. He saved the rebellion and did this and that. And he's got a little baby, and good for him. He did that so his child could, even though he didn't know it, but his child is going to have a good life now because he did this and sacrificed himself. On the other hand, I also see where Val is in contact with Bix.
Yeah.
Val's still alive. She's on Yavin 4. We got a couple of people from that series on Yavin 4. And I don't think, I guess Mon Mothma never really ran into Bix. They never really crossed paths. But anyways, I think they could do that. And I think it would be great. I would any Star Wars that they give us is going to be fantastic, I think, and I'm going to like. Yeah. But I'm not sure if we're going to get that or not. Would I like it? Absolutely.
Well, I will say a couple months ago we were speculating about this show of like maybe seeing a Omega and Hera Syndulla show taking place during the original trilogy, or maybe right before the original, probably during the original trilogy, right after Rebels sort of ends and all that stuff, because Sabine goes off to train with Ahsoka. Zeb goes back home. Kanan's dead. Ezra's gone. So it's really just Chopper, Hera, and her kid. And Hera and Omega have that backstory that was set up in the Bad Batch. So there was some sort of, and Omega obviously goes off to join the rebellion at the end of Bad Batch season 3. So there was some rumors going around for a little bit that might be some sort of next animated show type deal with Omega and Hera Syndulla during the time of the original trilogy. If you did something like that, an animated show, what's going on the other side of the rebellion type deal, because you focus on Luke, you focus on Leia, you focus on Han, but the rebellion is so much bigger than that. That's what Andor proves to us, is the rebellion is so much bigger than that. So if you focused on Omega, Hera, threw in Kalea, threw in Vel, threw in Bix, and had like Mon Mothma, because Mon Mothma is not in the originals until Return of the Jedi. So she's not there until the second Death Star comes around. So what is she up to? Like, there's always the question of what was everybody doing there during the original trilogy, because we see them all in the Mandoverse, but we don't know what they were doing during that time period. Not that I think they'll be making that show anytime soon with the Maul series on the way, but it's not like the worst idea to bring back those characters.
Yeah, I don't think we need it. I also didn't think we needed like I've said before, a Morgan Elsbeth backstory, but it was cool, and I'm glad we got it.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So I feel like similar to something Tony Gilroy said a couple weeks ago was, when they're talking about Cassian's sister, who he's looking for, that character is way more valuable as someone who's never going to be there than than someone that he eventually finds or they bring back, And so I think it's just as powerful because when Bix, I'll tell you, like Madeline, when we were watching Bix leave, Madeline's like, why the hell is she leaving? And like, then you get a very real, very, very real reason why she needs to leave.
Yeah.
That she can't tell him because he'll leave it all too. And they need him. It's not just like this, I have to do what's right and I'm going to leave. It's like, I have a freaking kid in my belly. We got to get out of here and then I'll come back, like we'll be okay. I feel like that is so powerful enough that like we can kind of assume that the rebellion forges on and maybe Bix comes by, but I wouldn't count on like a focal point of it being Cassian's kid or Bix having like a I think like you guys were saying, we'll love it no matter what. But I think because of Andor, that kind of freed all of us up as a fandom from having to tie everyone or cameo or Easter egg everyone and do all this stuff. Because I mean, we lost characters at a pretty rapid pace. Every arc we'd lose somebody, and or we'd put someone away, or we'd resolve something pretty quick. And I feel like that's something that I'm glad we're getting back to. As a fandom, that we're kind of putting things away and accepting the cost of these shows, which are loss, moving on. And I would not be shocked to see Omega in a project, but like I don't think they're all going to meet up the way. I think Rebels was like a treat, and everything that's come from Rebels, where everyone kind of links together in some way, was a treat. But I think we're going away from that a little bit. I also think Dave, as you were saying, Dave Filoni's been taking some heat for doing that too much. So I think he might be cooling off. That's all.
Yes and no. I did say this yesterday, but I'll say it again. With the Mandoverse, because that's sort of what they're going to be focusing on for the foreseeable future. What they've done with the character of Mando and Din Djarin is they've connected him to everybody. Much like you just said, they've connected him to all these different places, and that's why I think it's a great idea to kill Din Djarin. But that's just me, because he's connected to everybody. So it would be like this whole, I'm friends with Din Djarin. No, I'm friends with Din Djarin. Let's work together to take down the big blue meanie Grand Admiral Thrawn. But he's like, the whole gist of season 1 and season 2 is him meeting Fennec Shand, Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka Tano, Luke Skywalker, getting all these different connections to just Mandalorians, bounty hunters, Jedi, like all over the place. And that's definitely setting up something. Like, this is all just one big setup for Grand Admiral Thrawn, I think. But yeah, I mean, the likelihood of us ever seeing Vel, Cinta, or sorry, Cinta's dead. Vel, Clea, Bix, whatever. Probably very, very low. Probably never. But as Star Wars fans do, as per usual, I've gotten like a million messages saying, let's make the Dedra Prison Break show. Like, no, let's not.
Yeah, for sure. What's going on? Your pal Joe and another Mike who loves Star Wars just joined us. So appreciate you guys jumping on here. And we're just talking Star Wars, anything and everything. So appreciate you guys jumping in. Yeah, I think you're right, Mike. I feel like they're going to bring everybody into that movie. I think everybody's going to come in, and I don't have a problem with Din Djarin dying. I think he's done what he has put out to do. You still have Grogu, who can sort of carry on if he wants to, or if he becomes a full-fledged Jedi or whatever. But I think it's going to be something like you're talking about, where everybody's in this, maybe not all fighting together, but some cameos here and there to come and take Thrawn down, because he is such a powerful enemy and such a powerful bad guy, and strategically, not power, not a emperor, not a Darth Vader, but strategically, we see how incredibly intelligent he is in Rebels. So I think that'll be good.
I think it's important to note too that at least from the standpoint of the sort of main players we know, Thrawn's got to be gone by the end of this whole thing too.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible, if you've been privy to the Thrawn stuff recently, that he's not dead, that he's got it. Because one thing I love about Timothy Zahn's kind of like pivot on Thrawn is that this character does not necessarily love or care about the Empire.
Yeah.
And I think that makes the possibilities for the Mandoverse way more vast, or like there's a lot more things that can occur, a lot more interesting things to set up for even after the sequels. So Din Djarin being the linchpin for knowing everybody. I also think, I will say, hot take, Mandoverse, its only job was to tee up Ahsoka. I think that's my hot take. But I think that like Din Djarin being the focal point kind of carried us to this point, and now we have like 30 years of stuff we can do, or even after the sequels, that Thrawn can be at the center of, whether he dies or not, you know?
Well, my take on that, and it's a great take, I love that, is Thrawn, like you said, he's never really, his whole goal in the first place is to protect his own people. Like that's his first and foremost. That's the reason he joins the Empire, is to protect his people. What I think they've done with Ahsoka, and again, the reason I think, obviously, as you guys know, Ahsoka's my favorite project in Star Wars, and it's really not even close. There's a lot of reasons to that, but I think what's going to happen over the next couple of years is what we're going to see is Ahsoka is the focal point, not the character specifically, but that show, it sets up everything. And I think one of the biggest things it's going to set up, too, is that Thrawn hasn't changed. He doesn't want to be the heir to the Empire. He doesn't want to come over and take over the entire galaxy, at least not for no reason. What was going on Peridea is not talked about nearly enough. The end of Ahsoka, Thrawn is like, let's get out of here immediately. We're running from something. There's something here we don't even want to bother with. Send Balin Skull and Shin Hati to go find Ezra Bridger and Sabine, because we don't even care anymore. We're already gone. Like, it doesn't matter. We're gone. This place is scary and horrible. Something that's here we shouldn't be dealing with. Let's get out of here. So what I think's going on, we obviously have talked about Abeloth in the past, possibly the Yuzon Vong or some bigger species that's more intelligent or more powerful than whatever. We've gotten some Rakatan mentions in Andor, but I don't think that's the route they'll be going down.
2 of them.
Yes, 2 of them.
Which is weird.
Very weird.
Yeah.
But I think that, Thrawn's not in the business of trying to take over the galaxy. He's not in the business of trying to rule an empire. He's in the business of trying to protect his people, and he's seen something. He's seen something bad on Peridea that he's probably going to try to warn others about. And I think in doing so, he needs an army. He needs to protect the galaxy. I've seen these crazy theories online of what if Palpatine was a good guy? Just crazy people. But the argument is he creates a Death Star to ensure safety in the galaxy. But what if he actually created the Death Star to fight some greater threat that he knew was out there somewhere across the galaxy or something, because he has all this Sith magic and all this other crazy stuff? I think that's going to be something along the lines of what's going on with Grand Admiral Thrawn. I think he knows that there's some bigger threat in the galaxy, and he's going to try and protect the galaxy from it. So will Thrawn die in the end? I don't know. But we know that there's a deadline here. It's The Force Awakens. He's nowhere to be seen. He's not even mentioned. So he's got a very quick deadline approaching. And even if they defeat Thrawn and kill Thrawn, the First Order still rises to power, and the New Republic dies. So they don't really win. At least not for a while.
Well, also, to your point, there's a lot of EU stuff for that theory about Palpatine. There's a lot of EU stuff about that being, the reason why he's building up the military. I think you could say both ways. He's selfish either way, Palpatine. But I saw something that someone was talking about. There's this species that Thrawn and the Chiss are kind of at odds with out in the way out unknown regions where they're from, called the Grisk, that they're kind of at odds with.
So
the Grisk have this sort of manipulatable ability over groups of people.
And that's in canon?
Yes, that's canon stuff that was not before. You would think they're kind of taking the place of where the Yuzon Vong kind of were. But I saw someone saying like the Grisk are being set up in a way, the way that the Yuzan Vong were written back in the day, to be like a puppet of the Vong. So like the Grisk are kind of like that first layer of like, let's use them to probe these places. That's kind of how they did it.
Yeah.
And that I mean, shit, you could have that Abeloth, Thrawn, like there's a lot to tee up later on that would require a lot of story that we're all here for, but you could do it between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens like we're doing now with the Mandoverse. You could do it after the sequels, you could do it during, but like you said, Mike, he's just trying to consolidate power as fast as he can.
Yep.
Best way to do that, in his opinion, is the Empire. And we know that at some point, the Empire is defeated. And we're kind of there now. Like the remnants are gone.
Yep.
And then the First Order just pieces out of the Senate and says, we have this thing, screw you. And the New Republic's demilitarize all that stuff. So Thrawn has nothing to do with that. Thrawn would have taken advantage of that in a second.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Well, I think honestly, and people might not like this, but Thrawn might be overthrown by the other empire. I don't even know. The Empire. Yeah, we see the Shadow Council meeting. They're all so divided. Like some people are working on Project Necromancer. Some people are waiting for Grand Admiral Thrawn. Some people are trying to get to the next thing. Mm-hmm. So the First Order, we know, rises to power. That's the end goal. So Thrawn does not, or at least maybe he does for a little bit, but it doesn't last. So he might just get defeated by some opposing Imperials or something along those lines. But like you just mentioned, and it's insane just to even think about, if they're setting up the Grisk as this great big threat in the unknown regions, they're setting up Abeloth on Peridia, they're setting up all this crazy stuff for future storytelling, not just before the sequels, but also after the sequels. Then you're going to look at the sequel trilogy as like almost just an introduction to Finn, Poe Dameron, Rey, and others. And it's just going to be like the end of Palpatine's story. Like his attempt at returning, and all the other story around it is going to be like this crazy stuff with Thrawn and the Grisk and Abeloth possibly. Like it could get really, really wild really, really quickly. And this almost 30-ish, 40 years after the original trilogy is going to be filled out with just some incredible content of just great villains. Because a villain is what makes something really, really good. You can have a great story. If you don't have a good villain, I mean, you always look at Marvel movies. When there's a good villain, it's a great Marvel movie. Same thing can be said about Star Wars. The reason Star Wars is such a big success is because of Darth Vader. Like in A New Hope, he's just this menacing presence, and everybody loves him. And he's got the breathing thing, and his voice is all whatever. It's everybody loves a good bad guy. So is Palpatine. So is Maul. So is Dooku. So is Grievous. And adding Thrawn to that list, of course, is great because in Legends he's spectacular. But adding Abeloth and a new species, like we've never done that before. Same thing with Thrawn. We've never done a non-Force user leader before. A new species where they just absolutely just want to dominate and take over the entire galaxy. That'll be really cool, and probably give us some more references to the Rakatan Empire, who did the same thing long ago.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty cool. If you're just joining us, we are talking lore, and a lot of it. If you haven't picked up on it, these two guys are going at it back and forth, which is awesome. And again, we're getting into some of this stuff, which I think is fantastic. And what I really like about Abeloth, I really think that would be cool. And I think either Mike or Joe just said something about, and I know you've talked about it, Natalie Portman coming back as Abeloth, which I think would be really cool to sort of put her into that, where she could, get to Anakin and get to Ahsoka, and not as a scary thing at first, but hey, come here and let me talk to you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this, and then all of a sudden the teeth come out, and
it could be like it. You ever see that? Takes on the thing that you either want or don't want to see.
Yes.
My thing, I want to just jump quickly into a live action where I think the only thing where we could get a live action with some of the OG people, because I really think if we're going to go Luke, Han, Leia, and Chewie, we got to go animation unless we use I can't think of his name that was in Mandalorian and Boba Fett, the actor that played Luke. That was a great decision there. I'm still trying to process the Benjamin and the Jimmy Smits thing with Andor, just because it was such a different thing. The Han Solo stuff, it was okay. I thought they could have used a different actor, but he was enough for me to go, okay, that's Han. But that the guy that played Luke was like, oh, that's freaking awesome. This is a young Luke Skywalker. And I think they could do something like that where you've talked about before, Mike, with like his Jedi, his temple, when he starts it. Okay, obviously we know Grogu's not going to be there, but Kylo does come there. And there's other ones there where they could take that actor and bring him in. And I don't know what they would do with Kylo because obviously he's getting older, Adam Driver, but you could still have a cool live action from that. I don't think we can get a live action from the original OG characters. I think that's going to have to be animation, and I think that would be fantastic to fill in some of those stories.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, is like a Clone Wars style animation of post original trilogy legacy characters. I think that would kill, honestly. And I think the best person for that is a guy like Filoni, obviously. And that's where I get like I'm not trying when I doubt Filoni on the show, guys, I'm not throwing shade at him. I freaking love him. I think he's the best thing we got right now. I just hope that we look at what's happened with Andor and we recognize like why it was good. And it wasn't because we saw Darth Vader. It wasn't because we got like these huge interconnecting things. We got like these like a million small things. And we got like a good emotional story. And the reason why it would be great for Dave Filoni to do that animated show is not because he would make a cool looking Luke or a cool Han or like, all that stuff. It's because it would give us the stories that we need to fill the gaps, and he would do it. But it wouldn't be a failure if we didn't get the right cameo, if we didn't get the right, Easter egg. And I feel like we fall into this thing where like he gets all these cool things right, and we think that's why it's great. It's not. It's because he's given us actually a pretty cool story, So I feel like we need to be careful, because I don't want him to run into a time where he gives us a great show and then people are pissed at him because they didn't get to see Maul again for the 7th time. So
I will say Filoni, if he's the master of anything, he's the master of creating a new character. Because even George Lucas will tell you he created Ahsoka. Dave Filoni did, not George. So he creates Ahsoka. He creates the whole Ghost crew. He creates, with the help of Jon Favreau, he creates Din Djarin. He creates Grogu. He creates all those live action characters with Cara Dune and Moff Gideon and all those people in The Mandalorian. Like, they established so many great new Star Wars characters to the point where when we see those characters now in live action, they're legacy characters. Like, he's been around so long now that his new characters that he established, like Ahsoka, like Hera, like Chopper, when they show up, we're like, yes, we know those people. And they're not new characters anymore. But he's still establishing great new characters. Baylan Skoll, Shin Hati, Morgan Elsbeth, like he's just all the time. So with what they did with the Clone Wars, where you have so many new characters in the Clone Wars still. Like, you have your Anakins, your Obi-Wans, your Padmes, but you have Ahsokas, you have Captain Rexes, you have like just incredible now legacy characters, but they weren't at the time. They were brand new characters. Asajj Ventress, I guess she's from the original, but whatever. Asajj Ventress, you got Barriss Offee, like so many new characters, all the new Inquisitors from Rebels. So all that to say, if they're going to make a original trio animated show with Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple, also showing the downfall of the New Republic, and Leia and Han and Ben Solo, you can definitely establish a bunch of brand new fan favorite new characters. Maybe a bunch of them get slaughtered by Ben Solo, and that makes that even more of a crazy event when that happens instead of what it is now, which would be awesome. Like, as much as we love Cassian and we love the Andor series, all those characters die except for the few that do survive, and their deaths are epic. Luthen's death is like so, oh my god. Cinta's death is pretty crazy because it's by accident, but even still. And now Cassian's death has so much more meaning behind it. So what I think is sort of the possibilities for a Luke Skywalker Jedi Temple animated series with the original trio, it really allows you to do what the Clone Wars did, but people just say what the Clone Wars did as in Anakin's arc is better. No, he established so many new characters, set up so many new stories like the Bad Batch, like Rebels, like Mandoverse stuff. Like the Mandoverse is so connected to the Clone Wars still. And I think you can do that again, replicate it in a way, still obviously being original and new, but replicate that with Luke, Leia, and Han, because that's what we need right now as fans. Because yes, we got this whole great first, I don't know, 30, 40 years of the saga right now, but the back half is hurting. It's hurting a little bit. Not many people like the sequels too much, and Luke, Leia, and Han, who started this whole damn thing back in '77, they don't really have their stories filled out. Like, sure, Anakin does quite a bit, and so do Obi-Wan, and they got shows and movies and shows and movies and shows and movies, but Luke, Leia, and Han don't. They got a beginning and an end.
Yeah.
We need more of those three specifically.
Yeah. And you nailed it, Mike, that like if you come away from the Clone Wars that, you know, Anakin's much better and Ahsoka's cool, then you miss the whole show. And that's what I'm like worried about getting to with the Filoni stuff as a fandom, because they've proven that they like pulling the trigger when they feel pressure. So as a fandom, you need to take away like the real stuff that's going to happen with this experimental, like we're saying, this animated show is going to happen with the original characters. It's not going to be good just because the original characters are in it. It's going to be good because it's going to tee up a ton of things that will go in all different directions. And like you just said, we'll give them a middle. We'll kind of like bolster a lot of other things. And if we don't get a recreation of Mandalorian season 2 ending, that's going to be the least of our problems. Like it's going to do a lot more for us than just let us see these characters. But like he does so well, it'll use those characters to anchor whatever it is.
Exactly.
Like it's not going to be Luke's show. It's going to be a show where the main characters are an anchor, just like Anakin and Obi-Wan are. Yeah. Or just, you know, whatever. So
no, absolutely. There's so many episodes in the Clone Wars that are so great that Anakin and Obi-Wan aren't even in.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, arcs. Exactly. When you look at it, it's going to eventually lead to the sequels. So it's going to have to explain Luke's downfall, and Ben Solo taking over, and the Palpatine returns, and Snoke in the First Order. But yeah, the Clone Wars sets up the Bad Batch. It even has connections to Rebels. It sets up all this other stuff that isn't just the original trilogy or Revenge of the Sith, I guess. It sets up so much other stuff that's intertwined in there with all these new characters and all these other things. So same thing can be said about this show if it does happen. It's not just setting up the sequel trilogy. It's setting up stories to branch off, like you were just saying, like post-sequel trilogy stuff, or even just branches that happen at the same time as the sequel trilogy, because the Resistance is not that big. These characters that we follow, much like the original trilogy, there's other stuff going on in the galaxy at the time, the stories that could be told. But yeah, I think, and if we're talking real world timeline stuff, I think the Maul series was just announced because it's going to run for maybe 3-4 seasons, I would guess. Probably 3, I think, if you want to do 3 solid seasons of Maul, Underworld, Bounty Hunters, filling out that story, that'd be great. Like the Bad Batch almost. And then that would put you about 3 years, probably 4 years into the future. So we're sitting 2029. Around that time, we'll have gotten The Mandalorian and Grogu, hopefully the second one of that possible trilogy with Dave Filoni's movie. So 2026, 2028, let's say. So 2030 would be the third if we're staying on track. So then you would get to a point where that final possible trilogy of the Mandoverse could be killing Thrawn or ending Thrawn, and setting up perfectly the next animated series. Because at the same time the Maul one comes to an end, well, the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the Mando trilogy, whatever you want to call it, is coming to an end too. So now we can take those characters, Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, and survivors from the Mando trilogy, and put them into an animated series, possibly 8-7 seasons, that sets up the sequels. So when you look at it almost from a outside perspective of like real time timeline, it almost works perfectly. The Maul series will run for at least 3 or 4 years, and that'll put us right to the end of the Mando stuff with the Mando trilogy, hopefully, or at least the Dave Filoni movie. And that'll be the perfect timing to wherever Luke Skywalker ends up at the end of that to kickstart a new animated show following those characters.
Yeah.
It lines up perfectly with the Maul series being announced. So, I mean, the future looks quite bright for us Star Wars fans.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was saying. I've always said for me and you guys as well now too, but I was luckily enough I was able to start in 77, but by the time I'm getting ready to go, there's still going to be Star Wars. 80 years old, I'm going to be sitting, hopefully in my bed watching more Star Wars,
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys, and I know, we only got a little while. I do have to go to work. Yes, I have to go back to work, and as most of you know, I do travel, so I have to leave out of here tonight. But we have about 15 or 20 minutes. I want to ask you guys, what do you think in reference to, and Mike, you sort of touched on this when we started, a live action between now, the next live action besides Ahsoka? Is it going to be like a skeleton crew? We're going to get a bunch of new people and new characters that we're really not familiar with, or are we going to get somebody that we're getting a new story with, or possibly an older character that we're gonna look at?
I think Maul Shadow Lord's going to be a big one, and that will take up some significant juice. I remember, Ron, when you first started your podcast, the only thing we had going for us was a Bad Batch for a while. And so I think it'll have that kind of an effect on kind of like where our attention is, because I think it's going to be really important. And as far as live action goes, I feel like there'd be so much Shadow Lord heavy stuff that Ahsoka season 2 would come right in, and that'd be our focus. And then we're back to Shadow Lord. And so I feel like in the midst of those two things, if Shadow Lord is as huge as I think, and like you think, Mike, that'll be multiple seasons.
Yeah.
I think our next live action would be something a little lighter, like a Skeleton Crew. Because I think that there'd be a pretty big focal point and budgetary focal point put on those two shows. But I don't know what it would be.
Yeah.
I didn't know the Skeleton Crew was going to exist either.
Yeah, exactly.
So, right.
Well, yeah, it's very hard to predict next live action shows because just like that, like we didn't know Skeleton Crew was coming, we didn't know Andor was coming, we didn't know the Acolyte was coming. We never know. But I will say, yeah, you're talking at least into 2027 because Ahsoka is going to be in 2026. So you're talking at least 2 years from now, like post next Star Wars Celebration even. So I have no idea what it would be about. I'm guessing it would be another Mando project, maybe set up by the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I don't know. But yeah, now the live action shows are going to be dwindled down. Like we were getting 2 a year. At one point, I think we even got 3 with Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, and Andor. But with the movies coming back, because we're going back to the theaters, that's going to take away from a lot of the content being put onto Disney Plus, because we're going to be getting at least a movie a year for the foreseeable future with The Mandalorian and Grogu next year, Starfighter the year after, probably the Rey movie or Dawn of the Jedi or Dave Filoni's movie, or like you name it, there's 10, 11 movies in the works. So I think that'll take away from the live action stuff on Disney Plus, but I still think it'll probably be one a year or one every other year, something along those lines. What it will be, I have no idea. I assume it'll be Mando. Will it be Skeleton Crew season 2? Maybe. If I were to just like what I want, I guess, would be Book of Boba Fett season 2. As much as people didn't really like the first season, I think the opportunity with Boba Fett and just the underworld at this time period is really, really cool. You could bring in like Kira from the Crimson Dawn and do that story or whatever. There's a lot of open-ended stuff in terms of Book of Boba Fett season 2, so that'd be really cool.
I also think since we'll be kind of heavy on the Mando and Grogu and Ahsoka stuff, I could see if they actually are willing to do it, a little bit of murmuring about a season 2 of Acolyte. That would be a few years down the road. That probably wouldn't happen in 26 or 27. they would probably green light it by then if they were going to do it. I think we would already know if they were putting it together the same way we would know about same way we knew about Andor and Ahsoka.
Well, the thing is, from a Lucasfilm perspective, if I'm an executive looking out at or a producer, whatever, looking out at the audience, you see a lot online, just of course, all the crap on the Acolyte. Then when you come to Star Wars Celebration and Manny Jacinto comes out on stage and everybody's screaming season 2, you're getting mixed messages here. You got like things online with hundreds of thousands of signatures or whatever it is that's hashtag renew the Acolyte. Like, it's just all these mixed messages from the Star Wars fandom as to whether or not to get a second season of the Acolyte. But when you leave a project, like in the Star Wars world specifically, like you leave something so open-ended, it has to be resolved. Whether it's in animation or books or anything, it has to be resolved. So for anybody holding out hope for Acolyte Season 2, I mean, there's always hope. We just learned that rebellions are built on hope. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing what happens right now with Battlefront 3. Like, it's just chaos. So the Star Wars fandom can make some stuff happen. It is really cool. It is really cool. And I think Battlefront 3 will happen. I mean, if you're a Lucasfilm person and you're looking out at the audience and all you just see in all your comment section is Battlefront 3, Battlefront 3, Battlefront 3, you're going to get the message and be like, oh, maybe we should make this. But going back to the Acolyte, you can't leave a cliffhanger like that in the Star Wars universe. You just can't do it. Like, it has to be told at some point.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to get some sort of book or something in reference to the Acolyte at the end there, because we have so much Plagueis stuff that we know about, with James's book, and then we get to see him, and there's too many fans out there that enjoyed that. And now as people continue to grow, like you said, Mike, 5 years from now, people are going to be like, okay, we need the Acolyte. We want to know who Plagueis is. We want to see some other type of story in reference to this. So I think that could definitely happen, which I know all three of us would be ecstatic about, which would be really cool. I do want to touch on one thing with the book, or with the movies and all coming out and all, like you were saying. I'm a little disappointed because I love all the content we're getting. I know some people are just like, okay, it's too much, or we didn't like the Acolyte or whatever. But for me, and I think for you guys as well, just getting those 3 live action shows that year was phenomenal. And for them to cut that back and get one movie, which I'm sure the movie will be great and I'm going to love it, but I love getting all of this stuff so I have something new to watch, or something, again, to fill in that gap for that character that I was wondering about, or this thing that they were going to do, or whatever was going to go on. So that's for me, it's a little bit of a disappointment that I don't think we're going to get as much as we have been, because the money and the time is going to go into these movies, which we know I think are going to be fantastic, but we're going to get less and less of the Star Wars stuff that we have in the past couple of years here.
I would look at it as like we're getting a movie added to our plate of shows.
Oh, absolutely.
We still have Ahsoka, so it's like, still Ahsoka, and we got Shadow Lord coming, and the only difference is we just don't know what the next thing is.
Right.
Yeah.
And we kind of know what the real future things are, but there's not like hard concrete evidence yet. And it's like I would keep the faith, Ron, because I don't know if season 2 Ahsoka is going to wrap it up or not. I doubt it, honestly. I think, Mike, I agree with you. I think Ahsoka as a show and a concept is kind of the vehicle here.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant earlier about the Mandoverse setting up Ahsoka, is that I think the Ahsoka show needs to happen whether you like it or not, and it's great, and it has very important characters that we were able to set up through the Mandoverse and just run with it. We didn't have to set that whole thing up.
Right.
I think that will set up whatever the plan is, and whatever that is, I think we're all here for it. But I would keep the faith. We're still probably going to get some live actions. It's so hard now that I feel like we just got the most climactic year or two ever. Like Mandalorian as a show seems to be kind of done, which was cool. Ahsoka, tipping off and being such a success. Andor now being probably the most climactic thing we've ever had, honestly, especially in this new era. I think we're kind of coming down from it and wondering what's next. And we have no idea how Shadow Lord's going to tie into stuff. That could be as big as any of the animated stuff. But then
really could be.
Ahsoka season 2 could be as much of a juggernaut in its own way as Andor was for its season 1.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be as serious or as like Gilroy-esque. I think it'll be in a different way. But for the Ahsoka show, I think it'll be a juggernaut, and we have no idea where that's going to go or how the movie's going to tie into it.
Well, the crazy part too, and it's sort of tying it back with all this, with the Acolyte season 2, is like you just said, Ahsoka season 2 could be the Andor season 2 to Andor season 1. Like it could be Ahsoka season 1 was sort of just all the setup, and then season 2 is like as good as Andor season 2. The craziest part to me is that with the Acolyte, whether you like it or not, you can't just, you're really going to tell me that you don't want to see what a second season could be? Because we just came off the back of Andor season 2. If Andor season 1, because it is slow and the viewership numbers were not there, if it didn't get greenlit for a second season, because yes, it's kind of a cliffhanger at the end of season 1, not really, like it could be an ending, let's say. If we didn't get Andor season 2, like that's the reality here. Maybe the Acolyte season 2 sucks, maybe, I don't know. But what if it's as good as Andor season 2? Like we're just missing out on that because what? Because you didn't like what Leslie Headland had to say? Yeah. Like that's the crazy part too, is the Acolyte specifically could have been like a 5-season show. You could have got Kymir and Osha. It's Osha at the end, right? Yeah, Osha. Yeah. And then you could go to Plagueis, and then from Plagueis there to Palpatine, then Palpatine there to lead into the prequels. Like it could be a 5-season show of just greatness, probably the greatest show we've ever received as Star Wars fans, and yet we're never going to get that because you couldn't deal with what Leslie Headland had to say. And honestly, it has nothing to do with the content itself. It's fully about just the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I get that. What they said in the interviews was just crazy. They got to get some PR team over there, but the content itself, it's like, please give me more of that. More Kymir, more Osha, more Plagueis. I mean, you name it. But yeah, in the Clone Wars is the perfect example of that too. I just watched the first season of the Clone Wars again. It's not that good. I mean, it's good, but it's not that good. Season 4, 5, 6, 7 are all way better, but you don't get to those seasons if you don't have season 1. Right. Same with the Bad Batch. Bad Batch season 3 is just this incredible. It's a masterpiece, but you don't get there without season 1 and season 2. Andor season 2 doesn't happen without season 1. So that's my whole Acolyte rant.
That's exactly what I mean too, Mike. Like, you got to be careful about what we say about these shows coming up because they're very quick to pull the trigger, or they're very, they did that. I think this is another hot take. I think they did that. I think the entirety of Rise of Skywalker is a result of them pulling the trigger on fan reactions. I think we already know they scrapped whatever the plan was. So to me, like, they're quick to pull the trigger. We got to be very appreciative of what we're getting and be collaborative in conversation like these, which is kind of why we're doing this.
Yeah.
So that we can say what we liked, what we might have not liked, what we'd want to see moving forward, instead of like, show bad, this is why. And that's where we're at. And so I don't want Filoni to fall victim to that because we can be pretty harsh to the people that we love. We did it to George. Why wouldn't we do it to Dave? So I think we have an opportunity now with Andor being such a success to like kind of gain some responsibility with that and be the fandom that I think we deserve to have, and that's all I would say about it. But.
Well, I'm going to go ahead because unfortunately we do have to wrap it up a little bit, but we're going to try to keep these going. We're going to try to do, I think we're going to go from once a month to try to do these once a week. They will probably be on Wednesdays in between. So we're going to try to keep these going because I know all three of us could continue to talk about this for several more hours. But again, I really like what we had here today in reference to the different things that we were able to talk about, whether it was OG stuff or the new stuff, and just sort of bring that positive light that we all have in reference to Star Wars. So I really appreciate you guys coming on here and talking about it again tonight. And we'll definitely be doing this again a lot more often. So please leave your comments, subscribe, hit the like button if you haven't already. Let us know what you guys want to talk about. I was talking with Derek and Nick a little bit about this before, Mike, where we can even pick something like, pick a season of Clone Wars or Rebels and just sort of decipher it and see what everybody thought about that. Like you said, for Clone Wars, the first episode for me was fantastic because it's Yoda. Yeah. And it's giving you a little bit more of his strategic stuff that we see and stuff. Granted, no, it's not the best episode ever of Clone Wars, but for me, it was cool to tie some things in there. So again, maybe we can do things like that where we can talk about some stuff that's been out there. So again, thank everybody for coming on here. Jake, Jessica's on here now. Another Mike who loves Star Wars. Joe, your pal Joe, thank you guys for coming on here. We really appreciate coming on, putting your comments in there and talking with us about something that we all love. And may the force be with you, and we'll probably see you guys next week. I'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys.